Welcome back, dear friends, to another exciting episode of the Dispensation of Bahá'u'lláh. We're covering paragraphs 21 through 24 today, our part 9. Dear friends, we would like to open our session with a prayer, and this is a prayer for healing for all the friends that are sick, ailing, or in pain. Thank you. Thy name is my healing, O my God, and remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope, and love for thee is my companion. Thy mercy to me is my healing and my succor in both this world and the world to come. Thou verily art the all-bountiful, the all-knowing, the all-wise. Bahá'u'lláh. That was dedicated to anyone that is feeling sick or not feeling well. We hope you recover. We hope you recover fast. Dear friends, welcome back. Are you guys ready? Here we go. We're going to get into our session today. So we're going to be covering paragraphs 21 through 24. I know, dear friends, in our last section, we read a few of the paragraphs starting into part 9. But this time we're going to reread them and really get into it in this session today, okay? Here we go. So paragraphs 21 through 24. And you say, Ehsan, where does paragraph 21 start? Starts on this. First of all, you have to have your world order of Baha'u'lláh. Okay, that's the first thing. And it's on page 106. And paragraph 21 starts by the righteousness of God. Okay, so it's the second, right in the second paragraph, right in the middle, says by the righteousness of God, Baha'u'lláh wishing to reveal the full potency of his invincible power. So right there, page 106 of the World Order of Baha'u'lláh. So as last time, we started off this section, but we're going to recap as well as reread these paragraphs. These paragraphs are about drawing on the invincible power, something that we often forget to do. We may say our prayers, but when we are praying, are we really focusing our thoughts on calling upon his assistance? Or are we just trying, when is it time for a devotional where it's almost become kind of rote? We say our prayers and then we go off to whatever's next. And are we, or in crisis, or when we are being thankful, are we calling upon his aid? You know, really, genuinely, and really, the word is with sincerity. Real, genuine sincerity. If you recall the tablet of Ahmad is, you know, there is that word where at the very end of the tablet of Ahmad, and it says, you will be rewarded with 100 martyrs and a service in both worlds, right? But what is that word in the tablet of Ahmad that is that word that is so important? It's sincerity, okay? You have to say that prayer with that tablet with sincerity, meaning absolute. This has to be true, purity of motive, right? So That is the requirement. Or else, because he's the reader of the heart, right? So that is the requirement. So drawing on this invincible power. This is something that we should be doing every day and practice it. Remember, working that, spiritual muscles, as they say, all right? King of Days. This is another major theme in the writings of Baha'u'lláh. This is the King of Days. And then the seal of the prophets. And so this is mentioned in these paragraphs 21 through 24. And the beloved guardian quotes from Baha'u'lláh about the seal of the prophets. And so I've placed about 4 to 5 slides about understanding of what the seal of the prophets means here, as well as the power of the word. Now, this is each one of these topics, drawing on the invincible power, the King of Days, the seal of the prophets, the creative power of the word. Each could be a whole book in itself, and each could be a multi-course in dimension, okay? So, dear friends, the creative power of the word, I've just placed a few slides, and it's because in these paragraphs, the beloved guardian is just in his beautiful, beautiful language, eloquently talking about the power of the creative word, how it is life-giving and transmuting and changing. So this is something that I've placed a few paragraphs on. And so just to illustrate that, okay? So let's get into it. Let's reread these so it's ever fresh in our memories, okay? I'm going to read the first paragraph 21, and then we'll get, some of you guys are absolute stunning readers. We'll go to those next, okay? This is from the beloved guardian. Here goes. By the righteousness of God, Baha'u'lláh, wishing to reveal the full potency of his invincible power, asserts, should a man all alone arise in the name of Baha and put on the armor of his love, him will the Almighty cause to be victorious, though the forces of earth and heaven be arrayed against him. By God, besides whom is none other God, should anyone arise for the triumph of our cause, him will God render victorious, though tens of thousands of enemies be leagued against him. And if his love for me wax stronger, God will establish his ascendancy over all the powers of earth and heaven. Thus have we breathed the spirit of power into all regions. Miss Pam, if you could read this one.
This is the King of Days. He thus extols the age that has witnessed the advent of his revelation, the day that hath seen the coming of the best beloved, him who through all eternity hath been acclaimed the desire of the world. The world of being shineth in this day with the resplendency of this divine revelation. All created things extol its saving grace and sing its praises. The universe is wrapped in an ecstasy of joy and gladness. The scriptures of past dispensations celebrate the great jubilee that must needs greet this most great day of God. Well is it with him that hath lived to see this day and hath recognized its station. Were mankind to give heed in a befitting manner to no more than one word of such a praise, it would be so filled with delight as to be overpowered and lost in wonder. Entranced, it would then shine forth resplendent above the horizon of true understanding.
Beautiful, beautifully read. Thank you. All right, and let's go to paragraph 23. Miss Luann, if you could kindly read this one.
Okay. Be fair, ye peoples of the world. He thus appeals to mankind. It is meet and seemly for you to question the authority of one whose presence he who conversed with God, Moses, hath longed to attain, the beauty of whose countenance God's well-beloved, Muhammad, had yearned to behold, through the potency of whose love the Spirit of God, Jesus, ascended to heaven, for whose sake the primal point, the Bab, offered up his life. Seize your chance, he admonishes his followers, inasmuch as a fleeting moment in this day excelleth centuries of bygone age. Neither sun nor moon hath witnessed a day such as this. It is evident that every age in which a manifestation of God hath lived in divinely ordained and may, in a sense, be characterized as God's appointed day. This day, however, is unique. It is to be distinguished from those that have preceded it. The designation, seal of the prophets, fully reveals and demonstrates its high station.
Excellently read. Thank you, Miss Louette. And let us move to paragraph 24. All right. Dear Zamruhijan, if you could read paragraph 24.
Expatiating on the forces latent in his revelation, Baha'u'lláh reveals the following. Through the movement of our pen of glory, we have, at the bidding of the omnipotent ordainer, breathed a new life into every human frame and instilled into every word a fresh potency. All created things proclaim the evidences of this worldwide regeneration. This is, he adds, the most great, the most joyful tidings imparted by the pen of this wronged one to mankind. How great, he in another passage exclaims, is the cause, how staggering the weight of its message. This is the day of which it had been said, O my son, verily God will bring everything to light, though it were but the weight of a grain of a mustard seed, and hidden in a rock, or in the heavens or in the earth. For God is subtile, informed of all, by the righteousness of the one true God. If one speck of a jewel be lost and buried beneath a mountain of stone, and lie hidden beyond the seven seas, the hand of omnipotence will assuredly reveal it in this day, pure and cleansed from dross.
Thank you. Thank you. And carry on, dear Zamruhijan. Finish this paragraph up.
He that partaketh of the waters of my revelation will taste all the incorruptible delights ordained by God from the beginning that had no beginning to the end that had no end. Every single letter proceeding from our mouth is endowed with such regenerative power as to enable it to bring into existence a new creation, a creation the magnitude of which is inscrutable to all save God. He verily hath knowledge of all things. It is in our power, should we wish it, to enable a speck of floating dust to generate, in less than the twinkling of an eye, suns of infinite, of unimaginable splendor, to cause a dewdrop to develop into vast and numberless oceans, to infuse into every letter such a force as to empower it to unfold all the knowledge of the past and future ages. We are possessed of such power which, if brought to light, will transmute the most deadly of poison into a panacea of unfailing efficacy.
Beautifully read. Thank you. Thank you. Excellent. So these are the paragraphs, dear friends, paragraphs 21 through 24. Okay. It first opens, by the righteousness of God. This is a proclamation by Baha'u'lláh, wishing to reveal the full potency of his invincible power. And then he states, should a man all alone arise in the name of Baha and put on the armor of his love. And this is something we should all do, right? Put on that armor of his love. And now this is what Baha'u'lláh is saying. If anyone does this, just put on this armor of the love of Baha'u'lláh, even if he's all alone, what will happen? The Almighty shall cause him to be victorious, though the forces of earth and heaven be arrayed against him. What are these forces of earth and heaven? These are the dark forces. It's not just, if you live in a country where they're opposing the faith, these are also the dark forces, which is, the forces of materialism, the forces of that we've all talked about, such as racism or any type of ideas that would be in opposition to what the faith stands for. So it means even if all the powers of earth and heaven, even if the ideologies, or even if we talked about it in past section, talking about how even if the clergy went to the top of the pulpits and started proclaiming this or that, and leaguing hate and machinations and lies against the faith, even if all of that happened, all the forces of earth and heaven, and you were single and alone, but you had the love of Baha'u'lláh, and you were going forth to arise in his name, Baha'u'lláh would render thee victorious. Victorious. And then, this is so cool. What does he say? By God. This is the Baha'u'lláh speaking. By God, besides whom is none other than God. And then what happens? Should anyone arise for the triumph of our cause, him will God render victorious, though tens of thousands of enemies be leagued against him. And then, it's just like a build up. Here we go. And if his love for me wax stronger. I love this part, and I love this part. It's literally is if all that hate fuels the fire of your love and just builds that fire intensity in your heart, and you're ready to proclaim his name. And if his love for me wax stronger, what will Baha'u'lláh do? God will establish his ascendancy over all the powers of earth and heaven. Then Baha'u'lláh says, thus have we breathed the spirit of power into all regions. I swear, this is one of my top 5 favorite paragraphs, all of dispensation. I love this paragraph 21. It demonstrates the power of that absolute transmuting power of the power of Baha'u'lláh, if single and alone entering into the field of teaching and opening your mouth, because should a man all arise in the name of Baha, having that faith, having Baha'u'lláh will render thee victorious. Then paragraph 22, so beautifully read. This is the King of days. This is the King of days. He thus extols the age that has witnessed the advent of this revelation. Now, this is the King of days. And if we knew how incredible this day of days that we are living, we would not hesitate even for a moment, not even for as they say, even a nanosecond, to proclaim how incredible this day of days is that we are part and parcel of. We should be so ready to announce this joyous day that we are witnessed and are witnessing. The scriptures of past dispensations celebrate this great jubilee that must needs greet this most great day of God. And it said, were mankind to give it heed in a befitting manner, no more than one word of such praise, it would be filled, so filled with delight as to be overpowered and lost in wonder. Imagine trying to, describe something and then you're lost in wonder. That is just like, is the feeling of just like, that's, to me, that's what wonder is. It's just when you're gobsmacked. You just can't describe something and your mouth is just open and you're like, that kind of feeling. And I think that is the awe and wonderment when you're trying to describe this revelation of Baha'u'lláh. You're gobsmacked. You're just lost in this awe and wonderment of how incredible. It's entranced. The whole world is in this state of awe and wonder. And it says that all the dispensation, past revelations are lost in the sea of ecstasy, joy, and gladness. The whole universe is wrapped in an ecstasy of joy and gladness. And that is one of my top 5 favorite lines in the whole dispensation. The whole universe is wrapped in an ecstasy of joy and gladness. Every molecule and atom in this universe is celebrating this King of Days. That's such a cool line. Now, this is a very important paragraph 23. Because if you recall, in Advent to Divine Justice, the beloved guardian was stressing justice, right? Justice, fairness. And so this is coming from Baha'u'lláh. Be fair, be fair. We find this also echoed through also one of Baha'u'llah's last major works called Epistle to the Son of the Wolf. And he writes in it so many times, be fair, because he was writing to Sheikh Muhammad Taqi Najafi, the son of the wolf, which was an absolutely terrible individual. We're not getting into the history of who this person was, but Baha'u'lláh writes in that great epistle, be fair, be fair. And so it means abide by that level of justice, having that level of equity in your eyes. Okay, so Baha'u'lláh writes, be fair, ye peoples of the world. Don't have this level of bias that he says he thus appeals to mankind. And then now listen to the words here. Is it meet and seemly? What is meet and seemly? Not meat as in carnivore meat. This is a different type of meat. Meat here is it fair or is it good or just, meet and seemly? Is it right for you to question the authority of one whose presence he who conversed with God? So is it meet and seemly for you to question the authority? Question the authority of who are we talking about? Of Baha'u'lláh. So this is who we're talking about. Baha'u'lláh is writing this. Baha'u'lláh is saying, is it meet and seemly for you to question the authority of one whose presence he who conversed with God, Moses, hath longed to attain? So Moses longed to attain the presence of Baha'u'lláh. This is who it says, the beauty of whose countenance God's well-beloved Muhammad had yearned to behold. Muhammad yearned to behold the presence of Baha'u'lláh, through the potency of whose sake love, the Spirit of God, Jesus, ascended to heaven, for whose sake the primal point, the Blessed Bab, offered up his life. Every one of them yearned, begged, pleaded, and revered to be and longed to attain the beauty of the countenance of Baha'u'lláh. And then Baha'u'lláh at the very opening is saying, is it meet and seemly for you? Now think about what we are. And those manifestations are wanting to be in the presence of Baha'u'lláh. And we humans are questioning the authority of Baha'u'lláh, per se, the Father, and he's saying it. And then Baha'u'lláh says, seize your chance. He admonishes his followers. Now, the language here is admonishes. Admonishes means tells off, It's pretty strong language here. Now, he admonishes his followers. Inasmuch as a fleeting moment in this day, fleeting moment, not even a second, fleeting moment, excelleth centuries of a bygone age, centuries of a bygone age. Neither sun nor moon hath witnessed a day such as this. It is evident that every age in which a manifestation of God hath lived is divinely ordained and may, in a sense, be characterized as God's appointed day. So whenever a manifestation of God appears, that's the appointed day of God. That's the King of Days. Okay? That is, so whenever they appear, that is the appointed day. Just like whenever a manifestation of God appears, that is the city of God. Okay? Where that's also called the city of God, wherever they appear. So this is the appointed day. This day, the day of the manifestation of God, the day of Baha'u'lláh, however, is unique. This is Baha'u'lláh writing, and is to be distinguished from those that have preceded it. The designation seal of the prophets fully reveals and demonstrates its high station. Okay? So we're going to explore this because now this terminology, seal of the prophets, fully reveals and demonstrates its high station. Now, this was this beautiful paragraph was also the last one in this part, expatiating on the forces latent in his revelation. Baha'u'lláh reveals the following, again from the pen of Baha'u'lláh. Through the movement of our pen of glory. And you can see him, even imagine Baha'u'lláh with his musk-laden pen. Through the movement of my pen, whoosh, and paper and ink. Through the movement of our pen of glory, we have at the bidding of the omnipotent ordainer breathed a new life into every human frame and instilled into every word a fresh potency. All created things proclaim the evidences of this worldwide regeneration. This is, he adds, the most great, the most joyful tidings imparted by the pen of this wronged one to mankind. You want to hear something funny? I was thinking about this earlier. I was like, okay, they did so much to imprison Baha'u'lláh. God, they tortured him, they imprisoned him, they sent him from one place to another. But really, all they had to do was take his pen and ink away. If they just took his pen and ink away, that would have really been the end of all those tablets and writings, and that would have been really harmful to the cause. But I was just thinking, come on, every other day a tablet of this was coming out and a tablet of this was coming out. I guess they didn't think about that, right? But that would have been really harmful to the cause, other than, Dr. Bright has wanted to comment on this. Go for it.
The first passage we have from the revelation of Baha'u'lláh is when the most great spirit appears to him in Siyah-Chal, and he says, "We will make thee victorious by thy pen." No wonder his pen could be taken away from him, because that's how God planned to make Baha'u'lláh victorious, by his pen, not by his sword or not by the number of followers and so on, by his pen.
Right.
And that's why throughout the ages, he just wrote and wrote. That's why if somebody asks us if we have a holy book, the answer is no, we have a holy library. So that's the difference. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, here Baha'u'lláh in this paragraph here is stressing the transmuting power, this creative power of his word. The word, this every word has a fresh potency. All created things proclaim the evidences of this worldwide regeneration. And this is, he adds, the most great, the most joyful tidings imparted by the pen of this wronged one to mankind. And then someone asked me, he said, Ehsan, yeah, is this unique to the Baha'i faith that there's, Baha'u'lláh has this power and ability, this creative power of the word, creative. And I'm like, no, every one of these manifestations of God, they have the same they have the same mouth, they have the same voice, they utter the same speech, they sit on the same tabernacle. The quote from the Kitab-i-Iran, they sit on the same tabernacle. They are one and the same. So every one of them, whenever they appear, their word, it has the same power and potency. So every word that they utter, when it is injected into the world, is a fresh potency. All created things proclaim the evidences of this worldwide regeneration. In fact, there's a quote from the Kitab-i-Iran, which is so cool. And what it says is that if the peoples of the world had the capacity to understand the words of Christ, the faith of Christ at that point would have been, completely universal and transmuting the whole planet. But they didn't have the capacity at that point in time. So, this is the power. Every one of these manifestations of God have the same potency, but it's limited based upon the peoples and times that are the hearer. And so this is the reality. And Baha'u'lláh is saying, this is the day of which it hath been said, O my son, verily God will bring everything to light, though it were but the weight of a grain of mustard seed, and hidden in a rock, or in the heavens, or in the earth. For God is subtle, informed of all. And this is something that was very common in Arabian stories and even Persian poems and stories, that they always had knowledge hidden. It was in a cave or some weird, unusual place, and then some mystic had to go, or some traveler, and they had to go on hard journeys to go find this lost knowledge or mystery of something. But here, Baha'u'lláh this is actually, obviously, this is translated language, right? This is from Baha'u'lláh. So, and the beloved guardian is translating this. This is, so this is very spot on, as they say, translation. This is the guardian's translation. So, but here he's saying, if that knowledge is lost in under a rock somewhere, every form of knowledge will be brought out, because this is the King of Days. This is the Lord of Days. This is the day of Baha'u'lláh. And then in that allegorical, beautiful language, if one speck of a jewel be lost and buried beneath a mountain of stones and lie hidden beyond the seven seas. And we see the seven seas again. This was also, seven seas was mentioned in Advent of Divine Justice, talking about if this really far distant, impossible task of this knowledge be lost, so far away, beyond the seven seas, Baha'u'lláh, the hand of omnipotence, will assuredly reveal it in this day. There was these great sailors, such as, from Aladdin, not the Aladdin that you see on TV, in the animation, but there was, back in the days, there was, stories, the Arabian stories, and they would travel and go on ships and really go on incredible adventures. And there was always these stories of the seven seas and the mysteries of finding riches and jewels and all of these things. And so this is one of them, but it was not really about mountains of stones. They liked to have the riches, but the stones was about knowledge here, but more about the mystical knowledge of the heart. And this was about the journey. And this was, so it says, if that speck of jewel be lost, they will be able to find it, even if it's so far away. Okay, let's move on. And then He that partaketh of the waters of my revelation. And this is something that we should all do, right? We should be constantly partaking of the waters of this revelation, right? It's drinking it, lapping it up. I see my dog drinking water every night, and his tongue is like, and that's really what we should be doing. We should be lapping up this revelation like that. Lap it up, so drink it up, right? Taste all. Okay, partake of the waters of my revelation, will taste all the incorruptible delights ordained by God from the beginning that have no beginning to the end that have no end. And every single letter that proceed from our mouth is endowed with such regenerative power as to enable it to bring into existence a new creation. Again, here Baha'u'lláh is saying, read, every word is new creation. Everything I say, it brings new life. And then a creation, the magnitude of which is inscrutable to all save God. He verily hath knowledge of all things. It is in our power, should we wish it. I love this line. Here it comes. It is in my power, if we should wish it, to enable a speck of floating dust to generate in less than a twinkling of an eye suns of infinite, of unimaginable splendor, to cause a dewdrop to develop into vast and numberless oceans, to infuse into that every letter such a force as to empower it to unfold all the knowledge of the past and future ages. We are possessed of such power, which if brought to light, will transmute the most deadly of poisons into a panacea of unfailing efficacy. So if someone asked me, Ehsan, in paragraph 24, we really get a scale and scope of the, mind-blowing power of Baha'u'lláh. Absolute mind-blowing power of Baha'u'lláh. And then you're like, okay, then why was he 40 years in prison? If he had that power, he could have, he had all that power. If he had twinkling of an eye, he could have, changed a speck of floating dust into suns of unimaginable splendor. A dewdrop, which is nothing. A dewdrop into what? Vast and numberless oceans. That's not the only powers that he could do, converting that dewdrop into the oceans and, the dust into suns. He could, that's just the scale and scope. That's not his specific powers we're talking about. He had the power of, per se, the power. It was by choice. He was placed in prison by the authorities, and he, by choice, accepted, because it was the choice of the peoples to place him in prison. Because if he suddenly went like that, I'm out, I'm a manifestation of God, it would be stripping the humanity of their free will. And that is exactly not what the manifestations of God want to do. And so this was the choice of the manifestation of God, to accept the imprisonment to demonstrate his absolute love for humanity. So this was really an important demonstration here. So in this section, Dr. Bide, please go ahead, please.
Baha'u'lláh himself addresses that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad that you brought it up. Baha'u'lláh says, I have consented imprisonment so that mankind becomes free. So if he's asking us never to raise arm against powers and never fight, how could he do it himself? So that was a great also example, so that when he's asking us to be peaceful and non-aggressive, Baha'u'lláh demonstrated it completely in his life. And that's why he says, I have consented to be under chain and imprisoned so that mankind becomes free. And mankind becomes free when this aggression of humanity, which is so natural to us, unfortunately, which we have brought from the world of early existence leaves us. When we leave that use of aggression, humanity then will be at peace. And that's really what Baha'u'lláh is talking about. Thank you, Azza.
Thank you, Dr. Bayer. So these paragraphs 21 through 24, the beloved guardian here is highlighting further this potency, the power of the revelation of Baha'u'lláh by citing some statements from his writings. And remember, sure, we're studying Dispensation of Baha'u'lláh. Sure, we're studying Dispensation of Baha'u'lláh, but I also encourage you to go read the writings of Baha'u'lláh itself. Read gleanings from the writings of Baha'u'lláh. Read Epistle to the Son of the Wolf. Read tablets of Baha'u'lláh. And when you start reading more from the writings of Baha'u'lláh, you'll start seeing the absolute power of this, of the word, that creative word that is coming from his writings. So Baha'u'lláh is invested with so invincible an authority that all the powers of earth are unable to withstand him. And so this is from the words of the beloved guardian here. The followers of Baha'u'lláh can draw on his invincible power to attain victory when facing crises and challenges. And we have to remember this. This is something that often we forget, to draw on his invincible power. And again, this is the day. This is the day referred to by Baha'u'lláh as the King of Days. And the King of Celebrations is coming up very soon in April, right? Rezvan. So this is the King of Celebrations of the King of Days. So that's going to be an wonderful season coming up. The past manifestations of God have longed, and the words the guardian uses here, yearned, and it's so awesome, have longed to attain the presence of Baha'u'lláh. And this is something that, that we're going to talk about in a few slides. The title of Muhammad, the seal of the prophets, fully demonstrates the station of this day. So do we accept the seal of the prophets? Absolutely, categorically, we accept Muhammad as the seal of the prophets. But do we accept it as how the Muslims interpret it, as seal of the prophets? No, we'll explore that tonight, and we'll share that. So every letter uttered by Baha'u'lláh is invested with creative and regenerative power. Okay? So this is another, and it's not just by Baha'u'lláh, every manifestation of God. But when I say Baha'u'lláh, I'm talking about that holy essence that animates each one of these great souls. That holy essence that animated Mirza Hussain Ali, entitled Baha'u'lláh, that most great essence. Every one of them have been invested with this creative and regenerative power. So let us get into our study for today, okay? So in the statements cited in paragraph 21, so the first paragraph that we were studied for today, indicates that Baha'u'lláh is invested with so invincible an authority that all the powers of earth and heaven are unable to withstand him. And this is just so obvious, okay? When we read the life of Baha'u'lláh, okay? When we read the life of Baha'u'lláh, from going from this, minister's son to an absolutely horrible prison, right? The Siachal prison in Tehran, stripped of all, worldly goods. I mean, and put into, and then banished from one place to the next, going from Tehran to Baghdad, and then from Baghdad to Constantinople, from Constantinople to Adrianople. I mean, and those were during the worst of the worst winters. And I encourage you to read on those travels during the winter time. It was absolutely tortuous. So when he arrived in Adrianople. It was miserable, absolutely miserable. But it was during that 5-year sojourn in Adrianople that he wrote to the leaders of the world, the rulers of the world, the kings and rulers. And who is he? Who is this person? A prisoner? Who, on what right does a prisoner can write to Queen Victoria? To Napoleon? I mean, go read who these people are. Napoleon? And then a prisoner sitting in a prison cell writing, throw down your crown. Go read these tablets. Throw down your crown. Writing to Pope Pius IX, the Pope of all Catholic Church. Throw down your church. It's laughable almost. A prisoner sitting in a prison cell writing to these people. And then what happened? What happened to their empires? What happened to their thrones? Because they did not turn to this blessed beauty, to this ancient beauty, Baha'u'lláh. What happened? And this is why I said invincible authority, that all the powers of earth and heaven are unable to withstand him. Read his life. The power invested in that pen. You know, when Dr. Bayat said it was that pen that conquers all things. I joked, if they only took his pen away, they would have conquered. But the reality is, they could not stop Baha'u'lláh. They could not. The spirit of this power is wafted over all regions. The followers of Baha'u'lláh can draw on this power to attain victory when faced with crises and challenges.
Hey, son.
Please, your test fire.
In the previous chapter slide that you say that Days of Kings, when it says somewhere I think maybe the other one, 9 or something, it says Day of Kings. It says that talking about, is it the coming of Baha'u'lláh or the letter written to the kings of rulers?
Oh, we talk about the King of Days. Is that right?
Yeah, the King of Days, yeah.
Okay.
So
the King of It's a good question, dear Tesfai. And that actually is referred to in the text. I will show you exactly where it says. It is here. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
So it says, this is talking about the day, this is the King of Days, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It is evident that every age, this is as to your question, every age in which a manifestation of God hath lived is divinely ordained and may, in a sense, be characterized as God's appointed day. Okay? This day, the day of Baha'u'lláh, okay? So this day, however, is unique and is to be distinguished from those that have preceded it. The designation seal of the prophets fully reveals and demonstrates its high station. So we're going to explore what this line means. But every day that a manifestation of God lives is the King of Days, okay?
So it's not related to the letter written to the old kings or rulers?
No, not related, okay?
Okay, I just want to make sure to be, when it says the day of kings.
The King of Days, exactly. Yeah. No, it's the King of Days is an appellation talking about the day of God, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Miss Yudag, so good to have your hand up. Let's hear you. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Yes. The seal of the prophets, I have trouble understanding this because the seal of the prophet means Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.
So all the previous prophets and Baha'u'lláh is the seal?
We're getting to it. And you're not the only one on this planet that doesn't understand seal of the prophets. So that's why we're going to get to it, okay? So there's actually quite a number of people on our planet that has not understood this. So we're going to get to it. And I, on purpose, didn't want to put too many slides or else we'll get bogged down on Seal of the Prophets, okay? So, but because it's in Dispensation of Bahá'u'lláh and it's mentioned, I put about 5 slides explaining it from a Baha'i perspective on it, okay? So it's coming up, Miss Yuda. So don't worry on that, okay?
Okay.
Now, continuing on drawing on this invincible power, okay? So before I get to this slide, I'm going to ask the class, how do you draw on the invincible power? What do you do? What can we do to draw on this invincible power? You know, practically, what in our lives can we do? Anyone? I'm thinking Zamruhi and Farzad got their hands up and it looks like prayer to me, right? Right? You're absolutely spot on. Prayer, right? Prayer. But there's also meditation, okay? Meditation. We often say our prayers. Prayers are, we are asking God for something, or Baha'u'lláh, right? We're saying, oh God, I'm sick. Please help me. You know, I'm sick. My throat's not doing too good. You know, I said a healing prayer. Hook me up, right? That's prayer, okay? But often we forget about the other one, meditation, right? Are we meditating? Meditation is now he's telling you what to do. So you got to do your homework. You can't just constantly be like, oh God, help me, please help me, help me, help me. Yeah, God, he loves us, but it's not a one-way street, you know? I love thee, hence it's a two-way, you know, I love thy creation, hence I created thee. Wherefore do thou lovest me, that I may name thy name and fill thy soul with the spirit of life. It's a two-way street. So meditation is you got to also read his writings and follow and internalize it. So this is drawing on the invincible power. And in my previous analogy of lapping up, lap it up, you got to drink this fountain of knowledge. You don't just, you know, go to it and, you know, hover around it and look at it. Yeah, it's a beautiful ocean, but you got to aggressively drink at it, right? So those are 2 ways. There's more, okay? There's more ways to draw on the invincible power. Anyone else?
You need to trust God for everything that you do, for your prayer, for meditation, for word of God you read, and everything. If you don't have any trust, all what you are doing is to be fruitless.
Excellent, dear Tesfaye. Yes, you have to have faith in it, right? Okay, that is an essential requirement. You cannot be like, you know, I'm going to say my prayer, but I'm not really sure if this God or Baha'u'lláh is really going to answer, you know, my prayer or whatever. You got to have faith. There's a story about this church, and they were, you know, they really wanted the rains to come, and because it was really devastational to the crops, and it was completely, their crops had died completely, and they were mass starvation. So a young girl went to the church, and she went in front of the audience and said her prayers. But she was the only one wearing her rain jacket and had an umbrella, because she was the only one that actually, when she said her prayers, had faith that when she said her prayers, God is going to answer. No one else had brought an umbrella, you know? So the reality is, how much faith do you have, you know, in your prayers? How much faith do you have in him? Let in him the trust in trust. Let him trust in trust, you know? You know, this is the balance. This is the balance. This is the balance. This is about the power of the word, creative, right? So that's another requirement. Yes, dear Tesfaye, how much faith do you have in him? And the more faith and reliance in him, you will have power. So that's another requirement, power of divine assistance. Now, another one. Anyone else?
You have to share his message. You can't keep it to yourself. You have to teach.
Love it, Ms. Pamela, love it. Now, how can you keep this jewel to yourself, right? You cannot draw on the invincible power if you keep this to yourself. The only way to draw on this invincible power is if you share it. That's the Baha'u'lláh, His Holiness Abdul-Baha, the beloved guardian, Universal House of Justice have all said that you will be cut off from the outpourings of this confirmation if you fail in your duty to teach the cause. You'll be cut off. You'll be, as I've shown you so many slides in Advent to Divine Justice, like literally that you're putting up an umbrella and the confirmations are pouring all around you, and because you are failing in opening your mouth to teach this cause. So yes, absolutely, teaching is a requirement to receive divine assistance. Also service, okay? Service, pouring and giving of yourself. Look to the example of the master. Look to the example of the master. The more you serve others, give yourself, and your heart, your soul, your life, your possessions, the more that you can do, you're drawing, like you become a magnet, a spiritual magnet, okay? So these are just, there's actually more. I actually made a list and I think came up with 7 or 8 of them, at one time. So these are just some of the ways that you can draw on this invincible power, okay? Service, okay? Teach the cause, okay? So these are just some of them, okay? Now, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh promises his assistance and blessings for those who arise to aid his cause. This is such a beautiful quote from Baha'u'lláh. He says, "We behold you from our realm of glory, and shall aid whosoever will arise for the triumph of our cause with the hosts of the concourse on high and a company of our favored angels." And in the Kitab Aqdas, he counsels, "Arise ye under all conditions to render service to the cause, for God will assuredly assist you through the power of his sovereignty, which overshadoweth the worlds." There's an awesome quote from His Holiness Abdul-Baha, and it's in Abdul-Baha in Egypt. It's that text that was and it's almost the last paragraph in Abdul-Baha in Egypt. And Abdul-Baha says, Baha'u'lláh is the commander-in-chief. The commander-in-chief. And he says, I, the center of the covenant, am the general. So when I was reading this, it was so cool. It was literally like this, militarism analogy here. The commander-in-chief, of the army of God. And Abdul-Baha is the general. And when I read that, I was also thinking about this quote here coming from the Gleanings. "We behold you from our realm of glory, and shall aid whosoever will arise for the triumph of our cause with the hosts of the concourse on high." And I'm picturing, when I was reading this, I was like, the commander-in-chief is sending out his army, and one battalion after another, and it was such a cool visual to see. Imagine you there and you're like, okay, I'm scared. I don't know what to say. I'm not good at teaching the cause. The words never come to me, and and sometimes I don't know enough. But Baha'u'lláh assures us, he promises us assures us categorically, if you teach, he says, I will absolutely aid anyone who arises for the triumph of our cause. He will send hosts, not host. Keyword is here, hosts. So imagine he's sending Martha Root, he's sending Dorothy Baker, he's sending Lua Getzinger, he's like, okay, who's up, who's ready to go? And he's like, okay, yeah, Mr., this wonderful teacher, Mr. Mazandarani, he's ready. Let's send him down. There he goes. So any teacher, oh, Mr. Faizi, he's ready. Okay, so they're ready. They've been ready, and you just have to open your mouth. You just have to open your mouth. Here's another thing. I heard a wonderful talk from Rui Khanum. It's online, and in it, what she said is, many of the friends, when they say their prayers, they close their eyes, they get very reverent. Sometimes the Persians, they fold their arms, they get very serious. And, sometimes they even rock back and forth. There's no traditions in how to pray. Well, that's first of all, there's no traditions. But the reality is, what she said is, when you say your prayers, whether it's calling on assistance, she said, focus. Often when we say our prayers, we just close our eyes and our minds drift, and sometimes we're thinking about this or that or whatever. But she says, try to focus, okay? And even focus on someone from the concourse on high. Even picture His Holiness Abdul Baha. That's why we're so blessed to have his portrait. We could picture and call upon his aid and assistance. But it's now not wrong also to call on others from the concourse on high for our assistance. They're ready. Remember, the hosts of the concourse on high are ready to aid and assist us. So call upon their names. Imagine that when you're saying your prayers, you say, oh, Thomas Breakwell, oh, Martha Root. Imagine calling upon their names. They're ready to assist us. Right? So that's just a thought, just to share with you in your privacy of your chambers, and also whenever you need aid and assistance. And that's when the story was when Rui Khanum was going through the Africa on her travels, and she was with Miss Violette Nakhjavani, and she was going in the car, and the car was a Jeep. Generally, Jeeps are four-wheeler and they can go anywhere, right? But the African roads are of a different thing. They don't have roads. It's just dirt and rocks, and every one of them every wheel was bust up. Her transmission was rocked to the hell. And every so often, her Jeep was on the side of the road. So Rui Khanum, she was a absolutely blessed person. But she also at times had a fiery temper, whatever. So she got out of the car, seeing that this car has been taking a beating, and she gets out of the car and she's looking at that, the tire and the transmission and everything. And Miss Violette Nakhjavani, God bless her soul, she gets out and she says, let's say a prayer. And so Miss Violette Nakhjavani closes her eyes and starts chanting. And her beautiful voice, she's chanting, closing. Then Rui Khanum stops her. She says, hey, excuse me, Miss Nakhjavani, do you know any mechanic up there that you're chanting to specifically? So this was just a case and example of trying to focus your prayers. So it's not some general prayer of assistance. Try to call on aid and assistance to, so that it's more meaningful. That was just a joke of an example for you guys. So continuing on this theme. Oh, yes, Yudaja, please go ahead.
Are you saying they can have assistance from the souls which are in the afterlife?
So that is also in the writings, and I will send you quotes on that, okay? Okay, I will send you quotes on interaction of souls, whatever. The souls do not have physical interactions with us here, okay? They're gone. They're having a fun time. Remember, Baha'u'lláh says this world is the first pit stop, okay, for our soul. It's just like, imagine a train, okay? A train with 1,000 pit stops, train stops. And this is just the first stop. But because this is everything and everything for us, you know, we think this is it. And many people think this is it. In fact, Baha'u'lláh says this is transient and ephemeral. Do not place your home on dust and sand, you know? So, but the reality is those souls have moved on. They're going from world to world to world. But there's also in the compilations, there's Baha'u'lláh writes about this, also in gleanings from the writings of Baha'u'lláh, talking about, yes, in the world of dreams, yes, we can have degrees of interaction in the world, in the realm of the soul, with those souls that have, per se, you know, gone to the hereafter, Abha kingdom, as they say. But the level of their interaction with us, that's a different story, okay? There's no hauntings, there's no, ghosts or any of these type of things in the faith. So that is a different story, okay? I don't know how we got off on that tangent, but that is to your question, dear Yuda, okay? Excellent. Okay, so moving on. His Holiness Abdul Baha confirms, your Lord hath assuredly promised his servants, who are firm and steadfast, to render them victorious at all times, to exalt their word, propagate their power, diffuse their lights, strengthen their hearts, elevate their banners, assist their hosts, brighten their stars, increase the abundance of the showers of mercy upon them, and enable the brave lions or the teachers to conquer. Do you consider yourself a brave lion? That is such a cool appellation that Abdul Baha calls the teachers of the cause, brave lions. Shoghi Effendi also reiterates the promise of Baha'u'lláh. At all times, we must look at the greatness of the cause and remember that Baha'u'lláh will assist all who arise in his service. When we look at ourselves, we are sure to feel discouraged by our shortcomings and insignificance. In other words, don't look in the mirror, dear friends. Forget the mirror. Do not look at your I'm talking about the inner mirror, not the mirror. Some of us look much better than others. You can look in the mirror. But the point is, do not reflect at your own shortcomings, your own failings, your own problems and inabilities, but look to the greatness of this cause. Look to the greatness of this cause. And then how can you as an individual play your part? The beautiful thing about this faith is it's an orchestra. It's a beautiful orchestra. And there's so many instruments to be played. Some of us in this orchestra are incredible pianists. And we are great pianists. There's some violinists. And there's some that are just the most beautiful triangle players, and they got that triangle down. But every single piece in this orchestra is essential. None of them are superior. None of them are inferior. They're all beautiful. And that's the beautiful thing about the faith is we all have to find our part to play. And that's really what it is. What can you do to serve the cause? because not all of us can be, incredible teachers of the cause. Not everyone can play that part, in a sense. But we can all do something, even if it's playing a little kazoo, And it's just like, and it might sound annoying to others, but that is an incredible service in the orchestra. That's essential. So what can you do? This is something that we should always think. And through our lives, this is something else I was thinking about. Through our lives, our life situations change. And when we were younger, we were able to travel teach or go here or there, or before kids, we could do this or that, and things were different. I could do this or that. Then life changes, or situation changes, sickness, health, whatever. Now I can't do that. So I'm just sitting at home, or I can't do this. But does that get you off of playing the orchestra? No. Baha'u'lláh is still waiting to hear his instrument. He wants to hear his instrument. He says, oh yeah, at one time you were the greatest pianist, but there's other instruments in my orchestra. Go find another instrument. It doesn't, I understand you played that piano really well and it was like beautiful, but I understand, go find another instrument. And that's the beautiful thing about this cause. There's a lot of other instruments. Go stay in the orchestra. Don't now just go sit in the audience and just sit there and just listen to the orchestra. Be active. Be part of the faith. That's what the beauty is. Now, checking my time, dear friends. We got 15 minutes. Let's roll. So, as to the question, King of Days, right? In paragraph 22, Baha'u'lláh refers to this day as the King of Days. The greatness and significance of this age is one of the cardinal features of the revelation of Baha'u'lláh. He, in many of his writings, indicates that this is the day of God, a day which all the previous manifestations of God longed to attain. The revelation of Baha'u'lláh has been the purpose underlying all creation. He counsels the people of the earth, scatter the idols of your vain imaginings in the name of your Lord, the all-glorious, the all-knowing, and turn you unto him in this day, which God hath made the King of Days. So carrying on this theme, this is from the beloved guardian. This is from a letter. The significance and greatness of the revelation of Baha'u'lláh does not contradict the basic teaching of the Baha'i faith on the unity of the manifestations of God. According to the beloved guardian, no distinction can be made amongst the prophets in the sense that they all proceed from one source and are of one essence. But their stations and function in this world are different. Stations and function are different, but they are all one. The greatness of this day is due mainly to the intensity and distinctive character of the revelation of Baha'u'lláh. So it's the intensity. It's literally like, okay, in one dispensation, the orifice of light, the hole of light was open so much because humanity could not take that intensity of the revelation, okay? The light coming through that orifice was very small because humanity could not take that level of intensity. So every 1,000 years or so, when a manifestation of God would appear, that orifice opened up just a tiny little bit. And more, and more, and more, and more. And in this day and age, it's opened to the max, okay? And if we recall that Zoroastrian prophecy that we studied earlier in Dispensation of Baha'u'lláh, that the sun is at the peak, this is now the orifice of that, in this analogy, is now at its absolute open, okay? And the intensity is at the highest level, as well as the distinctive character of this revelation, as well as the station of Baha'u'lláh as the supreme manifestation of God. The bounties showered upon humanity in this age have potentially existed in previous revelations. However, humanity was not mature enough to receive these bounties, and the moment in time had not yet arrived for the glory of God to be revealed in such intensity. So humanity wasn't ready for that opening up of the revelation to appear. This is the time that that now humanity is per se ready for this revelation to appear. That's why it's upon the Baha'is to, now Baha'u'llah is saying humanity is ready, so it's upon us to teach, right? So these attributes of God are not and have never been vouchsafed especially unto certain prophets and withheld from others. Nay, all the prophets of God, his well-favored, his holy and chosen messengers, are without exception the bearer of his names and the embodiments of his attributes. They only differ in the intensity of their revelation and the comparative potency of their light. Intensity of their revelation and the comparative potency of their light. So that's the difference, but they are all abide on the same threshold, speak with the same tongue. Now, to Miss Yuda, when she asked about the seal of the prophets, right? Checking our time, 10 minutes left on quite an interesting subject. So let's see how we can answer this subject of seal of the prophets in 10 minutes or so. So in paragraph 23, Baha'u'llah describes the longing of past manifestations of God to attain his presence. And Baha'u'llah states that the title given to Muhammad as the seal of the prophets fully demonstrates the significance of this day. Okay, so as Baha'is, we absolutely and categorically accept the title seal of the prophets. Here Baha'u'llah states that the title given to Muhammad as the seal of the prophets fully demonstrates the significance of this day, which is the King of Days. So what does this mean? The term seal of the prophets refers to the following verse in the Quran. Muhammad is not the father of any of your men, but he is the messenger of God and the seal of the prophets. Okay, this is from Quran, the Surah 33, verse 40. Okay. Okay. The word seal, and this is seal, not means closing, not as the animal seal, okay? This different type of seal, just making sure everyone's all on board. That was some humor to keep everyone awake. Okay, so the word seal in this quote from the Quran has been interpreted by some Muslim scholars to mean the last, final, ornament, something to adorn with. Ring, seal as in stamp, sealing closed document, seal as in seal of authority and officiating a document. Such interpretations imply that Muhammad is the last manifestation of God, and there will be no more divine revelations in the future. So a good bunch of Islam, I mean, actually, I'm saying the vast majority of Islam, except maybe a very small group out of Islam, this is what they believe, that Muhammad is the seal. When they say Muhammad is the seal of the prophets, they say Muhammad is the last of the prophets. That's it. He's the last. But they don't know what to do with the Mahdi and the Qayyam. They're not sure, okay? So it's so distant in the future that many of them don't even talk about it anymore. And so but the reality is most Muslims, when they say Muhammad's the seal of the prophets, it's done. That's it. No more. Okay. So as Baha'i, what do we understand? However, there are many verses in the Quran and also the Hadith that contradict such finality. Okay. If you recall, there were 6,500 verses in the Quran. Okay. But over 5,000 of those verses, remember, if we scroll back in our study of the Dispensation of Bahá'u'lláh, when we're studying the Quran, over 5,000 of those verses, so over 80% of the Quran is about the coming, the one to come after Muhammad, meaning the Ghayyam. Okay? So if that's the case, why would, if there's over 80% of the Quran is about the coming, why would Muhammad be the seal of the prophets? And there's where 80% of Quran is about someone coming. Make sense? So, and it's not just Quran, also Hadith contradicts this aspect of finality. In such verses, reference is made to the return of Jesus, the coming of the Mahdi, and the prophecies of a new revelation from God. Hence, Baha'i scholars have argued that there should be more convincing interpretations for this verse. So, in Islamic theology, the manifestations of God are divided into different categories, depending on the degree of their independence and the nature of their revelation. Okay, this is I'm just going to break this down so you understand it easier, okay? In particular, there are two distinctive groups. They're the messengers of God, which are the manifestations, okay? Manifestations of God, okay? And then there are the prophets, manifestations of God and the prophets. Manifestations of God are called Rasul, okay? And the prophets are known as Nabi. Nabi is the word used in the verse from the Quran. So in Arabic, this verse right here, okay, Muhammad is not the father of any of your men, but he is the messenger of God and the seal of the prophets. This word here is Nabi, okay? Okay, so Nabi is the word used in the Quran there. The messengers are the independent manifestations of God, such as Muhammad, so the Rasul. The prophets are sometimes defined as those who receive their inspiration in the form of dreams, such as the minor prophets of Judaism. In the Quran, people such as Isaac, Jacob, Ismail, Idris, David, and Solomon are also referred to as prophets. Okay? So Nabi, Rasul. Okay? Now, however, if the seal of the prophets indicates any finality, it is the finality of the prophetic cycle. Okay? There will be no other prophets after Muhammad. Seal of the prophetic cycle. No more Isaacs, no more Idrises, no more Jacobs, and no more Davids and Solomons. Just Rasuls. The end of the prophetic cycle. Follow? Everyone understanding what I'm saying? The Nabis are done. And that is the significance. Now we're entering into a new cycle. Okay? Just Rasul cycle, the cycle of the manifestations of God. Okay? So this is what it means, the end of the seal of the prophets. Muhammad was the end of the prophetic cycle. It is huge. And Baha'u'lláh is saying that. Moreover, this indicates that after Islam, revelation occurs through direct inspiration from God. It means that there now doesn't have to be that intermediary, that prophetic person. It comes direct through the inspiration of God, comes to the manifestation, and he is the mouthpiece, and his word comes to the people. It doesn't have to now go through this intermediary, which is the prophet, and then probably go to some clergy person, and then that clergy person eventually gets to humanity. He's saying it doesn't need to happen that way anymore. It comes from the manifestation of God to humanity. That's huge. The reference of Baha'u'lláh to the seal of the prophets in paragraph 23 is an indication of how different the nature of this revelation is from the ones received during the prophetic cycle. In the Kitab-i-Iran, the book of certitude, Baha'u'lláh provides a much more detailed explanation than I attempted tonight, okay? And I encourage you to read Kitab-i-Iran and regarding this issue of banality, okay? So there we are. Ehsan covered this topic of seal of the prophets in 10 minutes. We'll close it off there. I have a few more slides on, the creative power of the word. We'll do that for next time, okay? So let me stop sharing. Any questions before we close, or any thoughts, inspirations?
I just want to highlight a kind of question for you, that one is to be, king and God is to be, is it the same that when he says king of days and the day of God? So in what sense these two are the same?
King of days and the day of God are synonymous. It means synonymous means they're the same thing. They both mean the day of the manifestation of God. When the manifestation of God, if we were living 2,000 years ago and His Holiness Jesus Christ was around, it would still be the King of days and the day of God, because this would be the day of the manifestation of God, His Holiness Jesus Christ. Okay? Right now, this is the day of God, the King of days, because this is the day of Baha'u'lláh.
So it's all the same.
Okay? So it's synonymous.
Oh, okay. Okay, I just want to make sure that because when the name and words are changed, sometimes have a different meaning. So in the writing, so that I just want to make clear. And then the next question is to be, it says Muhammad is to be the seed of the prophet, but he is not the father of any man, but he is a messenger of God. That means he don't have any kids, or what does it mean that to be by he is not to be the father of any man?
I'll like Dr. Bayat to answer this one. Go for it, Dr. Bayat.
Okay. I think the Muslims themselves often avoid talking about the first part of that sentence. It's a historical reason. Muhammad had one of his relatives was a girl, I think probably a cousin or something, a girl closely related to him. And Muhammad also had a servant that was a slave given to him by his wife. And Muhammad freed that slave and adopted him as his son. Okay?
Okay.
One day Muhammad went to ask for the hand of that girl for his adopted son. Those days, the customs were such that it was not done with the full information being revealed. The moment that Muhammad went to that house, that girl and the parents probably assumed that Muhammad wants to marry the girl himself, not for his son.
Oh.
And when they found out, eventually they married. So they were married for a few years. But that girl was coming from a high-class family of Arabs. Okay, they were really high class relative to others. And that husband was a freed slave. So that girl was not very happy. Okay, prejudice, I mean, always existed. I hope in the future it doesn't. So constantly complained. And one day, that man goes to Muhammad and says, my wife is really not very happy with me. More or less because he thinks that you were going to marry him. And there are more details of it. I'm not going to get into it. And Muhammad says, no, she's your wife. You need to keep it. And he says, I cannot do it anymore. He was frustrated because of prejudice on behalf of the girl. So the girl separated from him, and that girl would have been in trouble in those days and in that environment. So Muhammad married her, also being a relative. Okay? Arabs had this custom that nobody would marry his own daughter-in-law. Okay? But yet, this man was not Muhammad's son. He was an adopted son. So in this passage, Quran is answering the Arabs of those days that complained that Muhammad has broken the rule and marrying his daughter-in-law. He says, Muhammad is not the father of any man amongst you. So that's the first part. And then in order to show the station of Muhammad, it follows it to say, he is the seal of the prophets and a manifestation. So the second part is to show the station of Muhammad, okay, to quieten the Arabs of those days, and it did. But because Muslims don't generally like to talk about the first part of this sentence, because it involves things that in those days were not necessarily the right thing to do, but it was not his son, it was his adopted son. And in those days, the adopted son treated differently than a son, okay? So Muhammad, in order to set a rule for the future, he still set the rule that you don't marry your daughter-in-law, but I married this girl because she wasn't my daughter-in-law. And then in order to say who Muhammad was, the second part, the phrase of the sentence that says, he was the seal of the prophets, meaning he was very important. He ended the cycle of prophethood, but he was a manifestation of God. Okay? I hope that was clear.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Okay.
That's
But don't
much
repeat it.
more
Don't
clear.
repeat it to Muslims. They don't like to hear that story. They sort of feel that there is something not wrong, not right there. They keep talking about seal of the prophets, and if you say, "Well, do you know where it comes from?" instantly says, "All right, let's leave the subject." So
that's good
how
to
it
know.
happens.
Thank you
So
very
if
much.
somebody
Good to know.
asks you that, say, "Let's explore where the sentence comes from." And if that was a knowledgeable Muslim, instantly would say, "All right, let it go. Let's go to another subject." Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much. And checking our time, it's a little over. So let us have our closing prayer, and then we can all say good night. Thank you so much, every one of you. Which one of you would like to share a closing prayer this evening?
I don't know.
Oh,
I
I'm seeing Miss Darla. I'm seeing Miss Darla. Thank you very much, Miss Darla. Okay.
O God, my God, aid thou thy trusted servants to have loving and tender hearts. Help them to spread amongst all the nations of the earth the light of guidance that cometh from the company on high. Verily, thou art the strong, the powerful, the mighty, the all-subduing, the ever-giving. Verily, thou art the generous, the gentle, the tender, the most bountiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful, Miss Darla. Thank you so much. Thank you, every one of you.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you
night.
very
Good
much.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, Allah,
Thank
bye,
you.
everybody.
Allah, everyone. Good
Thank
night.
you. Thank you very much. Have a good night.